You have been told to be good, to be kind, to be merciful, to wear your virtues like armor. But what no one dares to confess is that goodness, when unguarded and absolute, becomes a weapon against its bearer. In this world, the sheep who flaunt their purity are not rewarded. They are eaten. A man who is wholly good in a world that is not will become a victim, not a victor. This is the brutal paradox. The more light you project, the more darkness you attract. The more merciful you are, the more you invite betrayal. The more you forgive, the more you encourage offenses. The more you give, the more you are taken from. Goodness, when not balanced by strength, becomes weakness. And weakness, in the eyes of predators, is blood in the water. Let me be clear. Goodness itself is not the crime, but blind, unconditional goodness is. Because it denies the truth of human nature, men are not angels. They are calculating, self-interested, and quick to exploit. A prince who wishes to remain in power must learn not just how to do good, but how to do evil when necessary. Mercy must be selective. Kindness must be strategic. Forgiveness must be rare and earned. You must master the art of appearing good while retaining the power to be ruthless. This is not hypocrisy. It is survival. A truly virtuous man is not the one who refuses to be cruel, but the one who knows when cruelty preserves peace. He is not the one who refuses to manipulate, but the one who uses manipulation to avoid war. He does not resist power, he masters it. For what is morality, if not a tool for control? The powerful preach virtue to the weak to keep them submissive. Religion, ethics, ideals, all are banners waved to control the herd, while those who wave them hold daggers behind their backs. The world does not reward goodness. It rewards usefulness. And sometimes, being useful means doing what is unpleasant, unspeakable, and unkind. Ask yourself, who has more impact? The man who prays for peace, or the man who enforces it? The man who turns the other cheek, or the one who builds armies? You must learn to wear your goodness like a mask, not a chain. Show virtue in public, but never let it blind your reason. Be good only when goodness serves your interests. Be kind only when kindness strengthens your position. Forgive only when forgiveness brings leverage. And above all, never sacrifice power in the name of purity, because in the end, this world does not belong to the good. It belongs to the intelligent, the strategic, and the strong. And if you must choose between being loved and being feared, choose fear. For love is fleeting and fragile, but fear, if properly maintained, is enduring. So remember this: if you wish to survive in a world full of wolves, don't try to become a saint. Learn instead to become a lion disguised as one. In a world governed by power dynamics, to be good without strength is not a virtue. It is a liability. Goodness in isolation is fragile, almost suicidal, because it assumes others will honor and reciprocate that same goodness. But history, psychology, and raw observation prove otherwise. Those who project innocence and unguarded kindness often become prey for those who view the world through the lens of advantage, dominance, and utility. A person who is good but lacks power is like a lamb among lions. Their compassion, instead of being admired, is seen as an opportunity. Their inability to say no, to draw boundaries, to retaliate when wronged, becomes a silent invitation for others to use them, abuse them, and discard them when no longer needed. People romanticize the idea that goodness is its own protection, that if you are just kind, merciful, and giving, the world will eventually reward you. But the world does not function like a fairy tale. The world is not governed by moral equations. It is ruled by incentives, instincts, and strategies. Goodness, when not combined with strength, does not earn respect. It earns pity at best, contempt at worst. Because in the animal kingdom and the human marketplace alike, vulnerability signals weakness, and weakness invites conquest. Even among supposedly civil people, those who cannot defend their goodness are slowly manipulated into servitude. They become the ones who apologize when they're not wrong, who give more than they can afford, who stay silent when violated, and all of it, ironically, because they believe being good means being passive. This passivity is not virtue. It is a failure to understand that in order for goodness to survive in a hostile world, it must be shielded by force. The man who carries mercy in one hand must hold a sword in the other. Otherwise, his mercy becomes meaningless, because it cannot be enforced, protected, or imposed. Goodness without power cannot change the world. It cannot stop evil. It cannot even protect itself. It becomes ornamental, like a porcelain statue, nice to look at, easy to shatter. This is why the wise do not merely aim to be good. They aim to be powerful and then choose when and how to be good. Their goodness is not a default setting. It is a choice backed by strength, and that strength ensures their virtue is not exploited, their kindness not mistaken for weakness. In this way, goodness becomes something potent, something feared even by the wicked, because they know that beneath the kind smile lies the capacity to say no, to punish, to withdraw, or to retaliate. So let it be understood, goodness that is not defended is not noble, it is dangerous, not just for the person who holds it, but for the world that sees it, because predators do not attack the strong, they feast on the gentle-hearted who cannot bite back. And if you wish to be good in this world, you must first become untouchable. Virtue is often seen as a moral compass, a guiding principle to live by. But in practice, it is also a tool, one that can be used not only to inspire but to dominate. Those who are naive believe that virtue is always sincere, always authentic. They think that people who speak of morality, kindness, and justice do so because they deeply believe in these values. But history and politics, even personal relationships, reveal a colder truth. Virtue is often a mask. It is worn by those who want to appear righteous while concealing their hunger for control. Preaching goodness is one of the oldest and most effective tactics to disarm the strong, to shame the independent, and to weaken the rebellious. It is not always about being good. It is about making others feel guilty for being strong. The man who commands others to be humble may himself be arrogant. The one who demands tolerance is often the first to suppress dissent. Those who lecture others about generosity are rarely the ones who give, because when virtue becomes a weapon, it is no longer about universal principles. It becomes a strategy of dominance. Teach others that selfishness is wrong, and they will serve you without complaint. Teach them that anger is immoral, and they will never fight back when you take what's theirs. Tell them that obedience is holy, and they will mistake submission for salvation. This is how virtue becomes reversed, how the appearance of goodness is used to uphold systems of exploitation. You see it everywhere, in politics, where leaders cloak their ambitions behind slogans of justice. In corporations, where exploitation is softened by public gestures of charity. Even in personal dynamics, where manipulative people use moral guilt to control those with a conscience. The truly dangerous ones are not those who break the rules openly. They are those who hide behind goodness while slowly tightening the chains. And the most dangerous lie is the one that convinces you that your refusal to submit is a moral failing. That to defend yourself, to assert your boundaries, to desire more, makes you selfish. In this way, the weak are trained to stay weak, not by force, but by shame. This is why it is not enough to be moral. You must also be skeptical of those who preach morality the loudest. Ask not what a man says about virtue, ask what he gains from it. If his words strip others of power, if his ideals demand your silence, your sacrifice, your obedience, then his goodness is a smokescreen. True virtue does not enslave, it liberates. It uplifts without demanding submission, and any virtue that benefits one man at the expense of another is not virtue at all. It is domination, dressed in white. The world will always be full of those who weaponize morality to rule over the naive. The wise, however, learn to see through the disguise. They do not reject virtue, but they refuse to be ruled by it. We are conditioned to believe that morality is pure, that those who speak of goodness and virtue are sincere in their intentions. But reality operates on a very different logic. In the hands of the cunning, morality becomes not a code of conduct, but a mask, an illusion carefully crafted to manipulate perception. People often do not aim to be good, they aim to appear good. Why? Because appearance is what moves people. It is what earns trust, unlocks doors, disarms threats. In a world where reputation shapes influence, the illusion of virtue is often more powerful than virtue itself. And the tragedy is this: most cannot tell the difference. A man who appears generous may be doing so only to build influence, to create debt in others. A leader who appears compassionate may be acting to maintain public support, not because he feels empathy. Even in private life, people will apologize not because they are sorry, but because they fear consequences. They will help others not out of love, but because it ensures future favors. The performance of goodness has become currency. It is not measured by what one is, but by what one can pretend to be. And in this charade, those who are genuinely good, quiet, unpolished, unstrategic, are often ignored or forgotten. Meanwhile, those who master the illusion rise, not because they are better, but because they understand how to dress themselves in the right words, the right tone, the right timing. This is not a condemnation of virtue itself. It is a revelation of how easily it is mimicked. The moral high ground is easy to claim when all you need is the right script. The masses do not investigate sincerity. They respond to surface. They trust appearances, not depth. And this is what gives the manipulator his power. He does not need to be just, only to look just long enough to gain loyalty, wealth, or status. He does not need to be kind, only to act kind when it matters. This performance fools most people because they want to believe in it. They are so desperate for hope, for decency, that they willingly blind themselves to the evidence of deceit. They believe what is convenient, not what is true. This is why power and morality are rarely allies. The more powerful one becomes, the more incentive they have to manipulate moral narratives. They will portray themselves as protectors, as visionaries, as servants of the greater good, even as they act in self-interest. And if they are skilled, they will never be questioned, because no one dares to suspect the man who wears the mask of goodness. So it must be said, do not trust morality at face value. Examine motives, patterns, and outcomes. The truth of a person is not in what they claim, but in what they consistently do when no one is watching. And if someone's goodness always seems too perfect, too rehearsed, too convenient, then it is not goodness. It is strategy. Forgiveness is praised as a divine act, a moral triumph over vengeance. We are taught to forgive without limits, to turn the other cheek, to release our anger in the name of peace. But this ideal, when taken to its extreme, becomes a poison rather than a cure. Because when forgiveness is given without consequence, it does not heal, it enables. It sends a clear message to the offender: your actions have no cost, your betrayal will be met with understanding, your disrespect will be tolerated. And in doing so, it empowers the very behavior it is supposed to dissolve. Forgiveness without judgment is not noble, it is negligent. A society that forgives too easily becomes a breeding ground for injustice. A person who always forgives becomes a magnet for manipulation, and the tragic irony is that those who forgive the most are often the ones hurt the most, over and over, by the same hands, the same lies, the same patterns. They call it patience, compassion, maturity, but at its core, what they practice is submission disguised as virtue. Their heart becomes a doormat, and their silence becomes permission. Forgiveness, if not balanced by standards, becomes a reward for the wrongdoer and a life sentence for the one who was wronged. The clever exploit this. They learn quickly who can be broken without retaliation, who can be lied to without consequences, who will always give another chance, no matter how many were already wasted, and they calibrate their behavior accordingly. Why change when the world always erases your mistakes for you? Why grow when your apologies are accepted before they're even spoken? This is where morality turns against itself. What was meant to be healing becomes a cycle of repeated harm. What was meant to be peace becomes permission for abuse. Even worse, unconditional forgiveness often silences the righteous. It discourages justice, confrontation, and accountability. It teaches people to swallow their pain, to bury their outrage, to see their suffering as a necessary price for being good. But no man should be expected to bleed quietly for the sake of appearing virtuous. No woman should be told that her strength lies in her ability to endure disrespect without protest. Forgiveness, to have meaning, must come after accountability. It must be preceded by recognition of harm, sincere remorse, and the willingness to make things right. Without these, it is not forgiveness. It is capitulation. So let it be said clearly, not all who forgive are strong. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is not forgive. Sometimes, walking away without offering closure is justice. Sometimes, silence is the loudest form of power. To forgive out of fear, habit, or guilt is not moral courage. It is a loss of self-respect. And if you offer forgiveness to those who treat you as expendable, you are not healing. You are surrendering. Love is fragile. It is based on emotion, circumstance, and the ever-shifting tides of human affection. It is easy to say be loved, but those who depend on love for loyalty, for obedience, for respect, walk a dangerous path. Because love fades, it tires, it becomes bored, and when it does, those who once pledged their hearts will turn away, often without explanation. Love binds, yes, but it binds loosely, conditionally. One mistake, one shift in mood, one new opportunity, and the love that once protected you disappears. But fear, that is something different. Fear grips the mind. It lingers, it creates barriers, calculations, consequences. People may stop loving you when it suits them, but they will not dare cross you if they fear the price. The Machiavellian mind understands this perfectly. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Because fear is rational, it is not based on whim or feeling. It is based on survival. Those who fear you will measure their actions carefully. They will not betray you casually. They will not test your patience or your limits, because they know those limits are real and they are enforced. Fear, when intelligently maintained, creates stability. It prevents chaos, rebellion, disloyalty. And the one who inspires fear while maintaining a reputation for fairness becomes untouchable. Not cruel, not hated, respected. Feared not because they are reckless, but because they are capable of consequences. Those who rely on love must constantly perform. They must always please, entertain, forgive. They must sacrifice their time, their energy, often their dignity, just to maintain the emotional bonds they depend on. And when they fail to meet expectations, love becomes resentment, affection becomes entitlement. The very people who once sang their praises now demand more, criticize more, take more. This is the hidden tax of being loved. You become a servant to expectation. But the one who is feared does not play this game. He commands. He sets the rules, and his silence is enough to make others think twice. This does not mean one must be a tyrant. Intelligent fear is not abuse. It is clarity. It is the unspoken understanding that your kindness is not infinite, your patience is not weakness, and your retaliation is not a myth. It is the ability to make others feel your presence without raising your voice. To make disloyalty feel dangerous, to make betrayal feel fatal. Love may be the more noble currency, but fear is the more durable one. And when you build your relationships, your reputation, your legacy, understand this: affection is seasonal. Power is not. The loyalty born from fear is colder, yes, but it is more dependable. It survives bad moods, harsh truths, and inconvenient decisions. So while the world teaches you to be loved, remember, love is chosen. Fear is earned. And in the long game of power, it is the one who is feared with reason, not hated without cause, who rules longest and falls last. The morally rigid are the easiest to manipulate, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are bound by predictability. Their principles make them feel superior, but those same principles become shackles in the eyes of the opportunist. When a person cannot lie, they cannot compete with those who do. When they refuse to betray, they cannot defend against betrayal. When they always play fair, they are unprepared for those who never do. And the great flaw in moral rigidity is that it leaves no room for adaptation. The rigid man sees the world in black and white. He obeys rules even when those rules serve his enemies. He holds his virtue above strategy, and in doing so, becomes a pawn in games he doesn't even realize are being played. This is exactly why cunning individuals thrive in a world of the morally inflexible. Because they know how to predict reactions, how to exploit principles. Tell the righteous man that lying is wrong, and he will never question a lie disguised as truth. Tell him that pride is a sin, and he will shrink every time he stands tall. Tell him that anger is immoral, and he will stay quiet when he should roar. And in this silence, in this self-imposed restraint, he gives power to those who have none of these internal limits. They do not have to beat him with weapons. They beat him with his own conscience. You will see this dynamic play out across history, politics, and personal life. Those who are the most morally consistent are often destroyed by those who are morally flexible, not because virtue is wrong, but because it is rarely enough. A code that never bends will eventually break. A strategy that never adapts will eventually fail. The world does not reward moral rigidity. It rewards utility, and those who cling to abstract principles, no matter the context, end up as martyrs, not masters. The Machiavellian mind sees virtue not as law, but as leverage. It asks not, is this right, but will this serve me? The difference is subtle but profound. It means knowing when to speak truth and when to hold silence, when to offer mercy and when to strike, when to obey and when to break the very rules you swore to uphold. This is not moral failure. It is moral flexibility, and it is the difference between those who survive power and those who are crushed by it. The man who cannot betray will be betrayed. The one who cannot deceive will be deceived. The one who cannot adapt his virtue to the reality of the moment will be conquered by those who mold their ethics like clay. To be predictable is to be vulnerable, and the morally rigid, despite their nobility, are the easiest to trap, because they will always do what they believe is right, even when it leads them straight to ruin. There are moments when cruelty, though ugly, preserves more life than compassion. This is a truth that moral idealists refuse to accept. Yet history screams it at us with every fallen empire and collapsed society that chose idealism over realism. Strategic cruelty is not the blind rage of a sadist. It is the deliberate, cold calculation of a ruler who understands that weakness disguised as kindness leads to chaos. Sometimes, to maintain order, the hand must be heavy. Not because the ruler enjoys violence, but because the absence of consequence invites far greater destruction. In the real world, peace is not maintained by goodwill alone. It is enforced by deterrence, by boundaries, and when necessary, by fear. You cannot reason with wolves while dressed as a lamb. A leader who refuses to punish betrayal teaches others that betrayal is survivable. A parent who never disciplines a child teaches them that actions have no weight. A government that turns the other cheek to disorder becomes a symbol of ineffectiveness. Mercy, when offered too easily or too widely, becomes an act of neglect. There are times when to be merciful to the guilty is to be cruel to the innocent. And the one who sees this, the one who accepts that cruelty can be a tool, not a passion but a responsibility, is the one who preserves stability where others collapse. This does not mean cruelty should be constant. It should be rare, deliberate, and always in proportion to its purpose. A single act of necessary harshness can prevent years of unrest. A single show of strength can silence 1,000 threats. The wise ruler understands the balance. Too much cruelty breeds rebellion, too little invites invasion. But between these extremes lies the path of strategic force. The Machiavellian does not reject ethics, but he refuses to let them blind him to necessity. He understands that in moments of crisis, moral hesitation can become lethal. Decisive cruelty, aimed at the right target, in the right moment, for the right reason, can prevent far greater suffering down the line. This is the kind of cruelty history often misjudges. The kings who ended rebellions with swift punishment are remembered as tyrants, even though their actions prevented civil war. The generals who showed no mercy to traitors are vilified, even if their ruthlessness preserved an empire. Because the masses remember emotion, not context, but the strategist does not seek popular approval. He seeks outcomes, and sometimes the outcome requires him to act in ways that the weak will never understand. If you want to protect what you've built, if you want to guard your people, your future, your throne, there are times when you must do what is ugly, unpopular, even hated. But if it spares greater destruction, it is not cruelty. It is discipline. It is control. It is the brutal wisdom that softness alone cannot rule a hard world. And those who refuse to embrace this will always fall to those who do.